All right, hello everyone. Podcast number 20, SANDDAO podcast, which is a podcast all about the Sandbox DAO. Today we're going to be doing a reaction to the Ask Me Anything done with the Sandbox Marketing Team for SIP number 11. SIP number 11 is the ambassador program, and they're looking to use 400,000 sand to increase compensation for ambassadors, increase the ambassador count, and 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 introduce new ambassador tracks to broaden the scope. If you're interested in seeing the in depth about that, go to SandDAO podcast number 18, which is where I did an in depth review of SIP-11 and went through the whole proposal. This one isn't going to be an in depth review of it. It'll be very interesting Ask Me Anything done just a couple days ago, where in Twitter, the Sandbox team came together and answered a lot of questions that were being had on the DAO forums. If you haven't been following that along, you can see it's gotten very colorful. So been a wide disagreement, even from current ambassadors. So there was a lot of discussion on this one, and it was so interesting around it that got to the point where I wanted to do an Ask Me Anything on this one. So, what is the scope of the talk? Today is another reaction piece. It's also an opinion piece. So I'm doing both. I'll be offering my own opinion, just like I did podcast 19 with Mia Bao and Seb. Disclaimer: I do not represent the Sandbox Game or the Sandbox Foundation, which is the DAO. I am not your financial or legal advisor, and nothing I say is to be taken as financial or legal advice. So, who am I? I'm Lanzer. I'm the podcast host. I am also the president of Meta Worlds. We have published two experiences at this point. One was Floor Droppers for Builders Challenge 1, and then one was Lava Defense, which was a Game Maker Fund GMF 2023. And we are a team of business people, gamers, and we've moved from we've moved from just publishing experiences now to the DAO, because a lot of our specialities coincide very nicely with the DAO, which is business, people, community, and gaming. And I'm Lanzer. I've been in the SandFam since December 2021, so about midway through season one. And I'm a landowner. I run around with my WoW avatar all the time, and it looks like Where's Waldo. And yeah, let's keep going. Scoreboard. Updated the scoreboard. Two SIPs did not pass quorum. So it was SIP 9 and 10, the NFT collection and the blockchain events. So that brings the SIP count to 3 not approved. And there's 2 open for voting, which right now, open for voting, you can go vote. Don't use the proposal website because it doesn't work. It's just not showing things. Instead, use Snapshot. Snapshot, I'll post both links in the chat. And use those. That will get you directly to the Snapshot link for both. They close in 48 hours. So need as much help as possible. SIP-10 and SIP-11. SIP-10 is the ambassador program. SIP-11 is, SIP-10 is the Sandbox Academy, and SIP-11 is the ambassador program we're talking about right now. Right now, though, it looks like SIP-10, dang it, 11 and 12. My fault. These are correct. SIP-12 and SIP-11. There we go. Okay, cool. So if you look at the current stuff on this, SIP-11 has 91% yes, 6% no. Quorum is only 19 million out of 30, so it's 62% quorum, not there yet, and it's getting down to the wire. SIP-12 is even less. It has 47% quorum, but clocking in about 54% yes. If you're interested in the details of SIP-12, did a podcast interview with Mark Bago back in podcast number 12. Wow, that was 8 episodes ago. We've been churning and burning pretty hard. So that's where we are. And then there's one SIP that is the NFT evolution SIP for NFT drops within the sandbox to your wallet. And that's by Crypto Diplo, which we will be having a podcast with later on in the week. So please go vote. Please go vote. At least it'll make quorum. It's the most important thing. All right. Checkbook. We're still at 13% because the last few SIPs did not make quorum. So 1.9 million sand spent out of 15.5 or 13% of the budget. DAO-based AI updates. We're sitting at 1,800 voters, 211,000 token holders, and Sandbox is trading at 23 cents. Sand token is trading at 23 cents. Let's get into it. So we're going to transition now over to the actual AMA. There we go. All right. So what's showing on screen now is the tweet that went out for the AMA. And it went out on August 28th, which means that on a Wednesday, they said that on a Friday, 2 days later, they would do an Ask Me Anything for SIP-11. And the interesting thing is that I had been asking to podcast with the what are they called? With the makers, the authors of the SIP for pretty much almost as soon as they had requested and put it on the ambassador forums. So they posted on August 7th is when Geraldine posted all of the SIP details, and August 8th, so a day later, I read the SIP and then I ask them some questions, and then I say, "Hey, would you be willing to go on the podcast?" So it was 25 days ago. And they had, as I went through the podcast with SIP-11, the responses were a little bit slow to come in, but they didn't really acknowledge my request to sit down and podcast. And so last Wednesday, they said they wanted to do a AMA on Twitter. So they did the AMA on Twitter, and I have mixed feelings about it. I haven't voted yet, and I was going to vote before the 24 hours are up, but I've been on the fence. There's been so much disagreement about this, even from current ambassadors, that's given me pause to go all in on the yes. And so I've had to really weigh values and different perspectives one way or the other on this because of how much disagreement there is on the yeses and the nos. But if you look at the SIP itself, in snapshot, you'll see that it has a huge number of yeses, 17 million. But if you look down in the cast your vote, in the actual vote explanations here, a lot of the yeses, right? So let's look at a few of them. So here's one of the abstains. Too much conflict between existing ambassadors and plans to pay new ambassadors. That is where I sit right now. There's too much conflict between the existing ambassadors and the plans presented by the Sandbox team. It seems like there's a big disconnect. Big disconnect. So Lotus said yes, anything to breathe life into this corpse. Why did I fall for an Animoca product again? I don't know what they mean by that. Animoca has invested in over 450 companies at this point, and Sandbox is by no means a failure. So, not sure. But a lot of yeses, a lot of yeses. Where did I read all the yeses? There were a bunch of explanations that were really interesting. Here's a yes. Good idea. Right. So, here, that was one yes. Here's another yes. Yes, but legacy ambassadors need to be grandfathered in and compensated. So a lot of people are voting yes, it seemed like, because they believe that the ambassadors are crucial to support the advancement of the sandbox, like in this case. But there doesn't really seem to be quite an awareness that there is such opposition to it. It seems like a lot of voting is going on, a lot of yes voting is happening because because when you read this, you're like, absolutely, I should support the ambassadors. They're a crucial part. And so that's a lot of the yeses. I mean, you'll see Candidly Kristen vote no, as she has pledged to do until a community member. This one's voted no. Why isn't the sandbox funding this? That was a good question. Not fully answered by the AMA, but we'll get into that. We need more people talking about sandbox around the world. Yeses. So it seemed like people haven't realized that there is a lot of widespread disagreement, and they just take the SIP at face value to say it is a sandbox ambassador program. Ambassador is good. Yes, therefore I should vote yes. So that's an interesting disconnect between the SandFam community talking about the SIP and then the SandFam community voting on the SIP. Very interesting development going on there. Okay. So then let's get into the actual AMA. So the AMA happened. It was about an hour long, and some people showed up that I weren't expecting. I didn't know who was going to host it, and it turned out to be Panda. Panda ended up hosting this, which wasn't a bad choice at all. However, Panda has not been involved in the Sandbox DAO pretty much at all. So her introduction as a moderator was already a interesting choice, unexpected. The AMA before it even started, it seemed like damage control because most of the SIP authors have accepted my podcast interview request, and we went over it in detail, in depth. But this time they didn't, and it seemed like the reason they didn't was because of just how much disagreement there was in the Sandbox forums, or the DAO forums, excuse me. Let's look at how many responses there were. 61 replies in this one, which is a lot more than usual. And so much of it seemed to be negative or critical. Even my questions, I had to ask questions that were trying to understand a little bit better, but they weren't able to answer everything, I think, up until today. So, yeah, it's kind of to the it starts at 6 minutes. There we go. And so the people who attended was the Sandbox DAO administrator, Cyril, the co-founder, Seb, the chief marketing officer, Amit Kumar, and then some people that he works with in the marketing team, Kelsey, who was revealed to be all my friends. All right, let's get into it, and then we'll we'll stop and respond as we can. Speaking.
As well, who will be a co-host today, and will also bring our marketing team, and of course give a chance to our community to exchange on a very important topic, one that I think has a lot of potential to grow the sandbox and bring a lot of new users. And we've seen a lot of engagement and conversation around, which is this SIP-11 to fund an ambassador program. So take the time to answer your question and see which direction we want to give to the program, how we can help um, making it even better, and how to get started, and also progress and uh, improve it as we progress. So thank you everyone for joining. Do we have our host for today?
Yeah, I have finally been able to join. Seb, what an amazing introduction. You have saved me needing to introduce you guys. So thank you ever so much. I'll still do another quick intro for everyone. So welcome on in. I am your host today, Pandapops, for those that don't know me, and we'll be discussing SIP-11 for the Ambassadors Program. We have, of course, the amazing Sebastian Bourget, the COO and co-founder to the Sandbox Game. A big welcome to Cyril Forte, the head of the Sandbox DAO. And we also have Amit, our Chief Marketing Officer here from the Sandbox.
So Amit is someone who we haven't interacted with and wasn't, as far as I was aware, didn't introduce himself during the Sandbox DAO forum public comment period. So we weren't really familiar with Amit. And and so to hear Amit speak a lot was I think it fed into the narrative, the existing suspicion and mistrust that the narrative was the Sandbox team just pushes this onto the DAO and says, "Go vote for it." And then when the Sandbox DAO, when the DAO community pushed back, they ran this and wanted to explain a little bit more what they were doing. Whereas before, I don't think they expected this level of criticism from SandFam. Let's rework this a little bit. Buenos dias, Miguel. So I'm going to rearrange my windows to fit a little bit better. And we'll be on our way. So Seb intros, hands, host, MC to Pandapops. I need Twitter space. Go. Okay, we're all fixed up. Let's continue.
So let's, unless any of you guys wanted to say a quick hello to the community listening right now, we can jump in straight away with the first question.
Of course, to a quick hello to everyone. Happy to see like the amount of conversation and engagement that the SIP generates. For us, it's we like to see everything and always from a positive angle. Like the DAO is like the
I'm not sure if he mentioned that because of how much negativity there was. But yeah, there was a lot of criticism. So I think this was an attempt to turn things into a positive way, which I fully, hey Sturgy, I fully support that, and I think that's a smart way to go.
way for the sandbox community to express their opinion, to decide like how the sandbox should evolve. So it's quite natural, and even better, it's expected that like those conversations happen. So you can vote in an informed way, and you can influence the sandbox to evolve in a way like you think will benefit the best toward its growth, its future development, its roadmap, its ecosystem, and driving the value of the different assets that we own, the sand, the land, and so on. So I wanted to first thank everyone for being here, giving us their time, and like the huge interest on the SIP-11. Maybe before we jump, maybe you want to quick highlight what's SIP-11, what's the
And it shows
what
Amit
it is
speaking, but really
about,
it's Seb speaking.
what it proposed to change versus what we have already in place so far, that what we've done in a very centralized manner until now, and like how we plan to decentralize it.
Yes, that pretty much is the start for our very first question, which is, so what is the ambassador program?
This is where we have
Amit,
some
if you're
audio
talking, I
issues.
don't think people can hear you right now.
Yep, we don't hear you, Amit. All right, so I'll step in, I guess, like in the meantime, while Amit is working on his audio connection issue, and we'll reconnect. So the SIP-11 is talking about like an ambassador program. Like we've had already in place a first version, the first iteration of an ambassador program, as um, we've we've grown Sandbox over the year. As you know, Sandbox started around 2018 as a blockchain platform. It has evolved a lot over time. And originally, those ambassadors had certain mission that also match with what we were looking for, what we were expecting back then for the first step of Sandbox when the community was much smaller, and also based on like how like people were engaging the most, which is certain channels of communication such as Discord or Telegram, for example. So ambassadors indeed by then turn out toward like creating conversation on those channels, engaging the user whenever they were not necessarily in using the product or in the game itself, uh, creating, answering the question, and producing tutorial, producing material that help also educate that community, promote the product, promote the different assets that are part of the Sandbox ecosystem, like the land, like Vox Edit, like Game Maker, like the Sand token as well, or the avatars. It really took different shapes, um, and I think it's been working well. I want to also like recognize the importance of the work of the existing ambassadors that we've had in the community. Everyone played an important role, and it's always important to recognize that. And we thought like it's a time as Sandbox evolve and decentralize and needs to keep growing and evolving like a child mature and turns into a teenager and an adult, to look at how we drive even more decentralization in ambassadors, how we, as we travel around the world, as we meet so many communities, in India, in Turkey. Right now, I'm in Korea, but I just came back from Japan or in Hong Kong.
That picture of his
We
with the
see the
samurai
strength
sword
of those
on the
different
back of his
countries. So
jacket
how
was
do we
awesome.
also bring and allow people who are passionate about Sandbox to become ambassadors and give them a chance to attract even more users from their region of the world with a different approach, not necessarily because there's not a single recipe or model of like how to attract people to Sandbox. Some people can be interested by art, some by fashion, some by gaming, some by music. It's also very multicultural, and that needs to be structured in a way that we enable the possibility to drive the development and the growth of the platform, still having a way to calculate a form of performance, not just based on like soft facts, not just based on like, yes, everyone is contributing and we are all growing, but having to be able to measure which ambassador maybe drive more users of a certain type of audience than another, compare their impact, and create. And it is an attempt that we proposed. I don't mean it's perfect, but we worked several weeks to try to create a quantifiable way to measure like the actions of those ambassadors. And of course, it's not just counting the number of messages they are posting on Discord. We've been creating something pretty structured that try to cover largely the scope of action that we've seen in the past. And it's not set entirely in stone. It will be flexible and evolve as well. And we could also count other metrics and KPIs that reflects how good ambassadors are in their mission and their work.
Okay. So that was Seb explaining the history of the ambassador program, how it started many years ago, and its first iteration was to create conversation and engage the SandFam and the communication channels and engage them in the product itself or the game and reducing the need for a tutorial. All right. So that makes sense. The ambassador program's been around for a long time. The ambassadors helped me onboard into the sandbox and in Discord and in game. In many cases, they would be in game answering questions during the seasons. Like, what is this? What do you do? How do you do it? They would also host in-game tournaments where you could parkour across the platforms that usually were raised levitating above the ground floor. And if you got there first, you won a prize, that sort of thing. So my introduction to the ambassador program was through the ambassadors like Candidly Kristen and Uncle Grumpy and many others. So they helped bring my attention and passion into the sandbox through them. And they helped facilitate that. And it was great. And I still speak to Chris and Uncle Grumpy even now in Discord. And so they they are an essential part of Sandbox. This SIP is to increase their compensation. So you would think no brainer. But the devil's in the details on this one. And the reason why it's created so much debate, disagreement is because some of those details some of the current ambassadors disagree with and don't believe should be implemented. Roxy Miguel in chat, he asked, "Do you think this proposal was ready to be a SIP?" I think it was, but I don't think that the All My Friends team was prepared to react to and answer the questions of the community and the disagreements that came about. They didn't respond fast enough, and so all this momentum started building and outside of their control. I mean, these discussions were being had on Twitter and being had on the DAO discussion channel within Sandbox Discord. These were open conversations, and if you had seen them, you would have known. You would have known that this was coming. So I don't know if they missed it or if they decided that they wanted to see it play out and let the community hash it out before they stepped in with an AMA like this. but I think it was ready. I just don't I think it was ready to be submitted. I don't think it was ready to be discussed. And I think all my friends, if more had helped out Kelsey, then this might have been a little bit less of an issue than it was. But they went entire weeks without responding back to questions, and so all of this built during the 2 week public comment period where there was no answers except for the DAO members to just go back and forth off each other. And that was not good because a number of those DAO members, some of them were ambassadors. So it seemed like the sandbox really, it painted the sandbox as being completely out of touch with their ambassadors. And I think this AMA was an attempt to bring it back, but as you'll see, and just the first question here, Seb is really just talking about the history of the ambassador program. And at the very end, he mentioned how this SIP is an attempt to create a quantifiable way to measure the actions of the ambassadors and to create a structured approach, which is a great thing to do. No problem with that at all. But there's so much disagreement being had in the forums, so much and unacknowledged questions. And so this SIP, I think, is to bring some answers to that. And we'll keep going. Rocky said also in the chat that he believed that more consideration should have been given to the process when it was still a proposal instead of fulfilling an agenda and turning them into SIPs. That was one of the things that came across. I don't think the Sandbox team meant to do it like this, but the kind of one-way communication happening right now where the only approved speakers are Seb, Amit, Panda, and Cyril, they pre-approved speakers made it seem like they're just projecting a narrative, projecting an agenda like here, this is what our answer is, this is what our answer is, rather than engaging in a back and forth discussion, which is really needed in either my SandDAO podcast format where I take questions from the community and we integrate the chat into our discussions in real time, or on the forums where a lot of questions and you just need to confront it head on and address the considerations because these people you can't just turn away from them. They're going to vote for you or against you, and the only thing that saved them in this right now is that so many voters saw ambassador program, didn't realize and they're voting yes, that so many ambassadors were opposed to this. Some of them noted it, and then they voted no. And you saw that in the description, like there shouldn't be so much disagreement from the current ambassadors. I'm voting no because of it. That happened. So that's the only thing that saved them being the sandbox team on this one, is if it makes quorum, it's likely to get yes voted because of how many people voted yes when they saw ambassador program and didn't realize the disagreement behind it. And Rocky Miguel said, I say this taking into account that I was not present in the DAO ecosystem until SIPs 11 and 12 were put to a vote. That's okay. Miguel, I think you understood it from the beginning why there was disagreement going on. And even the question that you just asked in the SIP forum there toward the end, and it kind of removed, you said it removed your doubt there, where Panda had answered you, where you asked, what does asset mean? And Panda said, it's generally a marketing term. Um, and Panda has been around for a long time in the Sandbox community, but she's been streaming from a Vox Edit game maker side. She's been streaming from jumping into your in-game experiences. She has not been very involved in the DAO. So the message I took from her being handed the co-host was they wanted a safe way to respond to the widespread disagreement and that they declined to go into my SandDAO podcast here as an interview because they were unsure of they want it to go well. They weren't sure of the uncertainty. Maybe they thought I would ask too hard of a question or whatever the case may be, but they wanted a little bit more of a they wanted to be sure that would go well, and so an AMA with only approved speakers would give them that security and that control that they were after. Miguel says in chat how prepared a proposal should be in your opinion. Just wondering if I ever plan to make a proposal and take it to the SIP. Well, check out SANDDAO podcast 2 and 3, I think it was, where I delve into the SIP process with Pepe from Magic Palette, whose proposal did end up passing, the first community SIP proposed that passed, and then also Kirill, who did Creator's first SIP, ended up withdrawing it when the council issued a negative recommendation on his proposal, so it didn't go to vote or public comment. And I delved into the depths of the Sandbox DAO SIP template that is provided, and I can link that to you, Miguel. But we go into depth into how prepared things should be, but you generally want to hit on explaining the rationale behind why you think this SIP is needed, explain the rationale behind how you think the DAO is going to benefit from it, explain and list out your expenses. So a lot of these SIPs only list like big dollar figures. Like we want 400,000, we want 200,000, 50,000, whatever. My SIP is the SandDAO podcast. I have 4 of them, but one of them, the closest one to vote, is that. And the most recent comments from the Sandbox DAO team the past week or two is they want to see itemized lists. Like, how much am I paying the video editor? How much am I paying the the podcast engineer? How much am I paying the scheduler? They want that to go down to that degree. So that's one of the reasons why it hasn't gone to vote yet, is because they've been asking me to continue to provide more in-depth costs. So I'm waiting for them to respond to that in order to push it to public comment and then to the DAO for vote. So it needs to be detailed enough to where people can read it and know why you're asking them to vote yes. And then high level enough to where, well, you can go as in depth as you want, keeping to the 10,000 character limit. It's a word limit. But you want there to be explanation to answer the question is why should they vote yes? Yeah. Yeah. Well, Rocky says in the chat how the DAO will benefit with a question mark. My brain's still thinking about how the sandbox will benefit. That is something that the AMA here tries to answer. One of the ways they try to answer the question is why are they asking the DAO for the money? They answered that in the forums, but it was kind of it was just a we think our values are aligned sort of thing. They don't really go into too much depth, so there's still that kind of hanging question in the forums that Kelsey from All My Friends, I believe it was her, but Kelsey or All My Friends answers later on in the forums about 20 hours ago. All right, so let's keep going.
Yeah, those are all absolutely amazing points. I'm just going to double check if Amit, do you happen to speak now? No, we cannot hear Amit. I am ever so sorry.
How about me? Is that better?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes.
Amazing.
Welcome
Okay.
in.
Sorry
I hope
about
you
that.
heard us. But
I listened,
okay.
but sadly was not able to participate. So sorry everyone for that. I wanted to quickly just echo first what Seb said at the beginning, which is the core purpose of the premise behind the ambassador program and expanding it was that we felt there was a growing number of just hyper engaged community members that we wanted to give the ability to participate to. And just the feedback on the forum, on socials, whether it's good or bad, I think goes to show like we're very grateful and we don't take for granted how engaged the community has been with this SIP. And that is really the purpose. And so I think that's important to note. I'll break down like very simply like what the ambassador program is into kind of like 2 core premises. We recognize that we have a growing community. We want to engage them. We want to benefit from their passion and expertise. And the program is really there to organize our most passionate community members. And number one, enable them to support and contribute to the sandbox. and number two, reward them for that time investment. And so we're going to get more into the details of
So that's a great thing. That's a great thing to better reward the ambassadors who are so important to onboarding new members. That's a great thing. So you have to be asking yourself at this point, why is the community so opposed to it? They haven't addressed that yet. They have Amit very, very briefly touched on, that he's happy for the responses, good or bad, and so that was kind of a way to spin it as let's move forward in a constructive way. Um, so yeah. So let's keep going.
how the program is structured and the different tracks. But that's really the core premise underneath it. It's enable our engaged community members to support the sandbox and then ensure that they have a way to be rewarded for doing so.
Cool.
Absolutely
Cool.
excellent.
At this point, we are about a third of the way through this AMA, and so far it's been very high level. Very high level. Hasn't really addressed much of the questions. So at this point, what I'm thinking, are we going to get to the actual part of addressing why there's so much disagreement? It A third of the way in, and most of it has been high level stuff. To me, is an eyebrow raiser. It they're playing it too safe, in my opinion. They're playing it way too safe. They're trying to spin this as a positive thing when the reason why they're doing this AMA is because of all of the constructive criticism that has been levied at them so far.
Answers to those from both of you guys.
Let's see if they
So
get to it.
let's move on to the next question, which is why did the Sandbox decide to expand the program now?
Why didn't we do it before? Like I go back to my
That's a great answer. That's a great answer. Why didn't we do it before? But again, in the context of why you're doing this AMA, that's not really the question that is being asked. There are a lot of other questions being asked, like what does the distribution look like? Do I have to do what you compel me to do? Because it creates a kind of like contractor freelancer relationship with an NDA and a contract being signed. So there's certain things that you can't talk about, and and some of the initial responses by all my friends, there are some things you must talk about. So that kind of introduces this whole question of I'm not really an employee, but I'm being treated like one. And so there's a lot of questions and criticisms being levied at why is that happening? What's the necessity for it? And the other lingering question was why should the DAO be the one paying for this and not as part of the operating expense for the Sandbox game and company? Let's keep going.
previous question, like what I was referring before, like we've been traveling the world, we've seen through like many events, the Sandbox Partner Day, the Sandbox Creator Days, um, the different landowners dinner or sand holder different activities or NFT holder activities. We've met people who are very passionate, people who just by themselves, even if there was not an ambassador program fully in place, they were starting by themselves to speak about Sandbox around them, to create content, to attend our events, to really like go beyond just like following on social media, etc. Like the highest level of engagement and beyond. And so I've been pushing for quite a long time. It's like, okay, how do we create the ambassador program 2022, and then we updated in 2023, and again in 2024. And last May, we introduced the DAO. The core purpose of the DAO is to give the voice and allow the community to vote by themselves on the thing that like they want to do, the priorities that they want us to associate. And so we wanted to enable the community to choose like the amount of budget, and even going further, not just choose the amount of budget, but ideally to vote on those ambassadors proactively.
Okay. So herein lies where things start to turn a little bit. Put it gently. Seb just said we want the community to choose the ambassadors and their payment. Use the term budget. And neither of that's happening with this SIP. So far. So this SIP introduced a budget of $400,000. Let's kind of roll up here, right? Actually, let's go to the actual snapshot. So your snapshot. Let's view more. Let's go down into the where is it? Where is it? Benefits. There. Budget. Budget requested is 400,000 sand. Okay, 400,000 sand, and kind of one more from that is they're about to answer the question of will the DAO have any say in this? Right? So this is what Seb is saying now at 17 minutes in. He wants the community to choose the ambassadors and their budget. So the SIP introduced to the DAO, it wants to pay them 400,000. And then in the question and answer that I went through in podcast, I think 18 or 17, where we went into that Q&A section of the forums, explained how the control of this program is going to remain in the hands of the Sandbox Game, the Sandbox company. So right now it looks like the community is getting neither. It's not able to assess a budget. Technically you can say it is because it's going to vote yes. I guess technically, but that's a technicality big time. There was no discussion in the DAO with the DAO members of 400,000 except through the forums. So maybe that's how they're going to say that was community led. But the whole SIP was written by the Sandbox team, and as we found out, the Sandbox Marketing Team. And then we don't seem to be able to, at least so far, all indications that the Sandbox DAO community, SandFam, will not be able to choose its ambassadors. It's going to be chosen by a central committee within the Sandbox team.
So they are not just named by Sandbox team alone, but they.
Oh, I paused it too early. So he just finished his sentence that it won't just be chosen by the Sandbox team alone, which is, yeah. You know what? That's going to be a question I'm going to ask. So when Seb said this, or how does the question? How does this integrate? No, what's the word? How does this Lanzer question? How does budget and not just chosen by the Sandbox team? There we go. So that's the statement. And not just chosen by the Sandbox team. So then what's the question? How does this statement of intent work with Amit's answer with actually all my friends form response and Amit, and what's the word? He doesn't reassure, he confirms that the that control of the program will remain with the Sandbox team. Okay, so that's the question. Let's keep going.
They could become really the ambassador chosen by the community for the community. So that would be for me like the ultimate iteration of what the program will propose. And we've worked through that with the team, with the feedback of all the team, of course, the one that's been the closest to the community for so many years, to structure something that give a start to that vision.
If I can complement onto that, Seb, hi everybody. Yeah, the goal.
So this is the first time Cyril is speaking. And he's not been too involved with the SIP itself, I don't think. So, okay, let's listen to hear what he has to say.
Is really we are on a path of progressive decentralization. So you will see more and more SIPs that are more and more inclusive to the community and allow people to take more active participation. But this is very the first step, right? So I think the SIP that has been presented today is more about validating the program as a whole. But like you said, Seb, with this path to progressive decentralization, we'll study carefully how to open up more and more decision power to the community going forward, because I believe that's the trajectory, that's the ultimate North Star.
Okay, so Cyril just said that this is the first step toward progressive decentralization, which has been a phrase that they have used since May. And we learned in podcast number, which one was Mia? Podcast number 14 was she's been using that term for a number of years in her videos. So I think that's where the term came from. But it basically means that it starts out with a centralized vision and controlling committee, and then over time, more authority and decision-making power is given to the community, to the masses. And they're doing that in a way that is that they're comfortable with, that they believe the community can respond well to and handle responsibly. Which I think that's probably a smart move. It's just the rate at which this progressive decentralization is happening. It's it's creating a lot of growing pains. A lot of, as you can see with this SIP, a lot of disagreement.
I'm not sure, Amit, if you're trying to speak again. I see your mic's turned off, but I can't hear any sound coming out from you.
Any luck?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
There he
Yeah.
is.
Perfect. Sorry, guys. I don't know what's going on here, but just to follow up on the point of why now, I would say historically, it's important to note that the ambassador program has been solely and largely centered around community management. So being active in Discord and answering community questions, like supporting them, engaging with them. And as Seb said, over the past several years, in the past year especially, we've seen that the community wants to take on more types of roles and find more ways to contribute. And many of you
Yes, it
have been
does.
doing so of your own volition, supporting us on social, supporting us in
Like this
content, and
podcast.
creating your own. And we saw the opportunity with that to expand the ambassador program in the types of roles it actually supports. And I think we're about to get into that with the next question with Panda, but that was really the goal. We saw an opportunity to expand the ways that ambassadors can contribute to and help grow the sandbox. And it was an opportune moment with the DAO to be able to try to empower and make that actually happen.
Excellent, thank you. So as you said, the next question will sort of explain a little bit more, which is
Okay, so we're almost halfway, and let's go back and listen a little bit, but it's still very high level. Hasn't really gotten to the point where where they've answered the questions. So this has turned into be this so far halfway through, it's turned more into a kind of like a press release than anything. So very marketing, which being chief marketing officer, that's exactly his job. So I don't fault that at all. All right, let's just keep going.
With the relaunch,
All right, so we need a new slide. So we're good on that one. Those questions.
the Sandbox has created 4 different ambassador tracks. For those that might not understand what those tracks are, can you explain what each of them are? And as we may have lost Amit again, we do have a potential backup speaker. But
Kelsey, if you might
yeah,
be able to join either, like
I'm
prefer.
going to introduce. So we do have Kelsey Dolby, our head of marketing. Some of you may have already met them online under All My Friends.
So that's where it was revealed that Kelsey Dolby was part of. She's head of marketing, and she has been the voice behind All My Friends, or at least one of them. But it seems like the voice. So
So if Amit can't speak, we luckily Kelsey is here to answer some of these questions.
so this is good. This is a great opportunity for Kelsey, who's been All My Friends. She's mostly been the one in the Sandbox forums. You know, right here. Oh, that's Canley Kristen. Oh, that's me. Where's the one? There it is. So generally been the one responding to everyone in the forums, and when she did responded great. I loved the answers. It was really helping to clarify some of the things that were happening. But but okay, so let's hear it, because Kelsey should have her finger on the pulse, right? She should know what's happening.
I don't know if you guys can hear me. I'm kind of swapping.
There we go. We can hear you now, Amit.
I don't know what's going on, guys. Every time I mute, maybe I just don't mute from now on. Every time I mute, it seems like it changes my settings somehow. Really quickly on the ambassador tracks, and if we continue to have this, we'll just have Kelsey step in. So sorry again. So yeah, we have 4 different tracks. It goes to
Okay, so Kelsey's not speaking right now. It's back to Amit, who is now explaining the ambassador tracks. I really hope she speaks, because this is an opportunity for Kelsey to weigh in on what she's been seeing on the forums, and if she's been monitoring Discord, the DAO discussion, and if she's been monitoring Twitter, the Twitter threads that are public.
the prior point I made around expanding the types of roles ambassadors can fulfill for the sandbox. The first one is community manager. So that is the core role that the initial program is built upon. The goal of it is to interact with the community on the Sandbox social and community channels. So not just on Discord, which has been the primary way in the past that ambassadors have engaged with the community, but also even on Twitter and on Facebook and Instagram and Telegram and in different channels, to where when we have community members that ask questions and engage, we want to have people present there that are knowledgeable about the sandbox to be responsive to that. So that's the core community manager role. Content creator is the next track. That one is one where it was inspired by the community themselves. We've seen so many instances on socials, on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram of the community creating amazing content that frankly our own internal marketing team was really jealous of. And we were like, oh, wow, we wish we could have content like that and thought to create these things. Because
That was very nice of him to say. It's like that's cool. That's real. That seems very real. You're saying, and it's flattering. So props, props for saying that. I mean,
your guys' creativity along with expertise on the platform is obviously unsurpassed. And so we wanted to create an ambassador track.
you can definitely tell though, head of marketing, a chief marketing officer, excuse me. It's very flattering, very um, self-depreciating. So in a way to raise up the community makes sense as a marketing team.
To be able to allow community members who have the ability and the desire to create content about the sandbox to be supported in doing so. And so the content creators are going to be tasked with making content for the sandbox to publish on our own channels. And so they
Oh, like Cyber Dragon. I missed that part. Will be creating content for publishing on TSB channels. That's an important point. So SandDAO podcast would not be able to exist within that role because I publish on my own channels, and publishing the SandDAO podcast on the Sandbox channels doesn't work. This is a DAO funded. If the SIP goes through and we're funded, it'll be a DAO supported effort, not a Sandbox. It's not a Sandbox podcast.
the idea is that you guys will come up with ideas for content, whether it's on the creator ecosystem around the game maker, the player side with game client, showing off playing your favorite experiences, creating assets in Vox Edit, whatever it is. And then our team will be able to take that content and post it on our socials for to give it a bigger platform. Next, we have the KOL track, key opinion leader track. And this one is similar to content creator, but there's an important distinction, which is it's still around the ambassador creating content, but this is for the ambassador to be posting on their owned channels. So the idea is that KOLs have built up followings of varying sizes, of course. Some of them might be video games, some of them might be fashion, some of them might be Web3, but in different verticals and different niches and of different sizes. We have so many KOLs that are a part of the sandbox. And so this is going to be a track that enables our ambassadors to create content and publish it to their own community.
Hey, Chiking. Kachinga. Hey, Daruth. What's up? So this would be the one that SandDAO podcast would be in. It would be under the key opinion leader, something that I published to our own channel, and yeah, and I did submit for the ambassador program. I'm still not sure. I'm still on the fence about it. Still on the fence. We're halfway through, and they're explaining the ambassador tracks, which they've already done in the Medium article and on the forum post. So at this point, I'm kind of in a weird state. I'm like, this isn't really an AMA because these questions have already been asked and answered. So I'm really hoping that they get to answering the tough questions that have been asked of them and not let it go by. That's my hope.
And be rewarded for doing so. And lastly, we have IGL. Those of you that are gamers might be familiar with this term, but in-game leader. And this is a unique one, and we've done it in the past at times. But the idea is that
and this one I think they've done in the past very successfully, where they would host in-game tournaments or in-game prizes. And if you showed up at that time and then participated in the event or whatever, then you got an airdrop. It's pretty cool.
Sandbox is a metaverse. It's a social space, and we want people and our players to also be able to engage with ambassadors while they're actually playing the sandbox in their experiences, in the hubs and things like that. And so we also wanted to have a track where people and ambassadors that play the game can be rewarded for simply being present and engaging with both new and existing community members within the platform itself. And so these are the 4 tracks we have: community manager, content creator, key opinion leader or KOL, and IGL or in-game leader. We could even expand it further in the future, but these are 4 distinct
I sure hope so, because one of the questions that I asked was, "Where's the ambassador DAO or the DAO ambassador?" Cyril and his team need help. They need help engaging, and their team is small, and you can tell because they're struggling to moderate. I think Cyril said in a response to one of my threads that there is no moderator per se. Geraldine is just tasked with promoting or creating threads on SIPs and then answering some where Geraldine is able to. But they need help. They need people to help. So I think they should open up a DAO ambassador track.
Tracks that we identified as opportunities to expand upon the existing program.
Excellent. I think it's also important to maybe let the people listening know that people applying for these ambassador roles, they could potentially be part of multiple different tracks. Is that correct?
Yep, that's absolutely correct. And so obviously, like it's time commitment willing. And so we need to be confident that the people that want to be a part of multiple tracks do have the bandwidth and ability to succeed at them. But they're not mutually exclusive. You can absolutely have someone that's both a content creator and a community manager, or
That's cool. That's an interesting thing. You can kind of be both. So let's green up that section. So we're past that, and we're at the next question, which was, can people be part of multiple tracks? Meet says, survey says, yes.
vice versa, or any
That's
combination
good to
thereof.
know. That's something new. I don't think we've heard that answer before.
Excellent. And I'm just going to stay, Amit, please don't mute your mic. Again, it needs
Yep.
to stay on constantly.
So that was
But
the first question asked that wasn't asked or answered in the forums up until this point that I'm aware of.
our next question is, how will the ambassadors be compensated for their work?
Yeah, so this has rightfully, I think, been a pretty like hot topic, in the DAO.
There we go. Hot topic. That's it. Let's talk about it because this is where it gets this is where people like Candidly Kristen have some very strong opinions and criticisms of what they've seen so far. So, Amit, what do you got for us?
DAO forum and on socials. And so I think it's important for us to kind of address this, of course. A couple things. Number one, there's going to be a set, uniform, transparent compensation plan across the ambassador, the entire.
And all my friends did post that one earlier today. Let's take a look at it real fast. So here it is, the compensation matrix. There we go. So if you are a KOL influencer, the light version is one post every 2 weeks. The full version is one post a week. And it looks like it's all doubled. So at the micro level, you get 100 sand a month. Lower mid level, you get 200 sand a month. Upper mid level, 500, and macro level is 800. I don't know what that means. Micro, lower, upper, macro lanes, but of the light version, that's the compensation. And the full version is that, but doubled. And the full version is you post one time a week. For content creators, the light version is making one asset every 2 weeks, and you get 250 sand a month. Whereas the full version is one asset a week, and you get 500 sand a month. For community management, the light version is spend 4 hours a week, you get 750 sand a month. And the full version is 8 hours a week and you get 1,500 sand a month. That's a pretty good amount. The 100 sand, 200 sand, and the 200 sand, 400 sand for the KOL influencers, that that's kind of low. I mean, you pretty much get about that just participating in the events. But I mean, it's better than zero. For content creators, you're getting more. So it seems like, oh, and in the light version for 4 hours a week is 400 sand. I would, if I were them, I would bump it up because your in-game player retention is pretty important. Pretty important. Yeah, Kachinga said 100 sand is $25. So that micro under the light of KOL influencers, that's $25 a month, US dollars. And then it's $50 a month for full. And that's posting once a week. So the end game, the light is 4 hours a week, which is 400 sand. The full is 8 hours a week, 800 sand. These numbers seem a little bit low, and as I recall, the current ambassadors are getting. I don't think they're even getting that much. I don't remember. I think I saw someone put what their compensation was somewhere, but it was not much at all. They had said. So that was what all my friends responded to on the forums after the AMA, and then talked about how there's currently 35 ambassadors right now, and but only I think 5 are active at any given time, which is surprising. It seems like there are more ambassadors active than that. They just seem to be more present than just 5 people. Under what conditions would a newly accepted ambassador not receive compensation? This is just all my friends just said. This is only about talking about the application of it, and not the actual. Like if you get accepted as ambassador, you will be compensated for your work. That's what that's saying. What's stopping TSP from welcoming in even more members? That's because they said they were focused on community management and fostering the ecosystem. And as they've grown and entered new markets, which that pairs nicely with what Seb said as to why they delayed a DAO until May of this year, we see it now as a great time to revamp the program and allow more participation and rewards. We felt that proposing in the DAO makes the most sense given the goals in the ambassador program and the DAOs are in alignment. Okay, cool. Makes sense. What about this does not allow you to project the exact number of ambassadors? And went through a few reasons. Variable compensation. So they hadn't quite figured out what the compensation was yet, on what tracks they were offering. They couldn't predict the quality of the candidates. So making sure that one post was actually enough a week. Next one was what key metrics. So active members, assets delivered. So it sounded like they hadn't yet figured this part out yet up until recently. They didn't really know, and they didn't know they needed to know, which kind of goes along with what I had been saying, how my SIPs had been under pretty intense scrutiny for really detailing down to the nth degree what it was that my SIP was offering. Whereas the Sandbox SIP, I don't think they had this. Didn't seem like they had this yet. A light and full track. You can kind of see the grammar of it. It's kind of all in lowercase. I don't think that this was made before the SIP was created. And I don't really necessarily think it needed to until the community asked for it. Like, that's your time to create it. It doesn't necessarily have to be done 100% to the nth degree beforehand. And then I think the DAO team, because it was a sandbox SIP from the sandbox team, they let it go through in the condition that it's in. And then they realize, oh, shoot, the community is really asking all of these questions. And then they need to give more. And they did. So they did. Uh, I don't fault the process here for that one. Just don't apply more scrutiny to my SIP because I'm a community member and I don't have quite the power that the Sandbox team does. All right, and then will the management of the program change from the Sandbox to the DAO? The Sandbox will remain the manager of the ambassador program, and pretty soon here, Amit will say that outright. The DAO is providing the funding for the program, and we request support. Blah blah blah. Allegations and cheating, we take it very seriously. Any requests are reviewed by our internal teams and our anti-cheat parameters. And ambassador program compensation, which we went over first. So that was all my friends' response to a lot of my questions, and then other community questions after that. Okay, let's keep going. Back to the AMA. Twitch has comments as well. Miguel said, one problem I always believe the Sandbox had is that they think sand is worth $1 and tomorrow will be worth 10. I don't disagree with that. I myself believe, even though I know it's trading at 26 cents right now on the dollar, I understand. I look at it as I want it to be $1. I hope it will be more than that. in the future. It isn't right now though. So yeah, no, that's fair. All right, back to the AMA.
Entire ambassador program. And so each of the 4 tracks that we just outlined will have 2 levels of time commitment. There's going to be a light version and a full version. For content creators and KOLs, light versus full is determined by the number of posts. For community managers and IGLs, it's based on the hours they put in. But in both cases, you're going to have 2 tracks of time commitment, and they're going to have set amounts of compensation per track accordingly. We have been getting feedback and going back and forth with both existing ambassadors as well as new applicants that are interested in joining the program. And so we're still finalizing exactly what those numbers will be. But
So that's what I mean. They didn't know yet. I don't think they thought they needed to know yet. And I don't fault them for not knowing. You need to know if you're asked. There's SIP, creating SIPs is hard. It's very hard. I've done 5 of them and I'm working on 3 more. It takes a lot of research, a lot of critical thinking. It takes a lot of uh like back end formulas and just all sorts of stuff. You have to anticipate questions and then decide on whether or not though answering those questions in the SIP is worth it. Not worth it, but is it significant enough to put in the SIP? You want to give so much detail that you get tons of disagreement on the fine details. And so there's an incentive to keep it at the high level because at the high level people can agree on things. But when you start getting down into those, is it 100 sand or 200 sand, and then people will vote no because you decided to say 200 sand versus 100 sand when you didn't really need to say so in the beginning. Like that's a whole negotiation that I myself have an appreciation for having gone through this process. So Kachinga said that and not communicating anything to us that makes us believe it. Yes, agreed. Agreed. Should have been much more communicative before now, 3 days before the SIP ends. I think they realized that there was so much disagreement going on that they feared that that would derail some of the yes no vote. And we're seeing that's not the case right now, but yeah, it is of note for sure.
and this is an important point, we plan on publishing and sharing with all of you what that compensation track is going to be for
And that's what we just went over here with all my friends. This part right here.
all 4 different ambassador tracks at the 2 different commitment levels publicly. So everyone will have full visibility and transparency into what the compensation is for the different tracks.
Now, to be noted, full visibility and transparency at the tail end of the vote. But like I said, I don't fault them for it.
And that
It just took them a long time to respond to it. That's what it really was. There were questions about the distribution weeks ago during the public comment period.
could mean as a community member you're able to be in the know, or it could mean as a prospective ambassador like what you're going to be getting and what you're going to be signing up for. I do want to note that just from an admin perspective, because I saw this question, ambassadors are not employees of the sandbox, but rather they're contractors, and so it's a much more like flexible work arrangement, and the time commitment that we're expecting from ambassadors is much less than what we would expect from like a full-time employee or something like that. But yeah, in terms of compensation, we will be sharing that ambassadors will be compensated in sand on a monthly basis, and the
And
initial
now we know what that
numbers
looks
that we
like.
share, they will be subject to change, but that'll largely be due to if we see tremendous fluctuations in sand or things like that, because we want to ensure that ambassadors are always being compensated fairly and reasonably on like global pay.
So there you have it. And it looks like which will be adjusted to ensure they are compensated fairly. And that's directly to what Kachinga was just saying and Miguel. So it looks like Amit is saying that they are willing to change the compensation rate, which is why it's so difficult. Should you put it in the SIP or should you not? Because these things are subject to change and they're allowed to be changed like that. So that gives them flexibility. But where now we nailed them to give us a number, they did, and then we disagree with the number or whatever, and then people vote no because of it. It's just it invites more. And I understand and appreciate why they didn't, but because they're asked so much about it, they did, and I think that was the right move to make.
pay scale, um, but will be transparent, will be shared, and will be uniform across the whole program.
Excellent.
Well, Miguel said in chat, being someone who is very impatient, I think it would be very difficult to me to create a SIP or prepare it and meet the requirements of the DAO team. Yeah, right now the requirements of the DAO team are pretty high. I think, and that's because they stated that they want these initial SIPs to be spot on. They want to be in top form. That way, they serve as an example to all the other SIPs that follow. And as a result, most of my SIPs have been waiting for comments for over 30 days. Even the SIP that is closest to vote has been waiting for almost a week. And just the back and forth needed. It's because they only have one person working SIPs right now, and Cyril is trying to hire more than one. So, yeah.
So moving on. So who manages the ambassador program now, and will ownership change
Here it
if
goes.
this SIP passes?
Here it goes.
I can take this one on, and then Cyril or Seb, if you guys want to jump in afterwards. Yeah, we saw some questions about ownership of this, and the fact that
And so this long kind of buildup kind of tells you what the answer is going to be already. Amit, even though this is mostly the marketing team speaking, and they're going to have the sort of wrapper. One could call it fluff. I would just call it, healthy explanation. You can expect that, right? You know to expect that. But this kind of tiptoeing toward it kind of tells you what the answer is going to be. I'll give you one guess.
it's being brought as a SIP to the DAO. The reason why it's being brought to the DAO is because we think the vision of the ambassador program is incredibly closely aligned with what the DAO's own purpose is, which is
Go on.
how do we enable the community to participate in the evolution and growth of the sandbox ecosystem. And so that's what the ambassador
That that is a confusing answer to me. So let's look at what's the vision of the DAO, right? So it's in vision. All right. So here's the vision. Vision is to one community, many parts. We are a metaverse diverse platform. It is also working with impact. We work with a collective to build a platform that serves a community. It's empowerment. In our community, every voice matters. Your participation via digital ownership allows you to shape the future. And then transparency, decisions, information, process. If I had to guess, they're trying to fill it through vision statement number 1, which was one community, many parts, and vision statement number 3, which is empowerment, to empower the community. However, this SIP came from the Sandbox team. And we'll see here in a second, Amit confirm that it's going to remain with the Sandbox team. So it's not going to be in the DAO's ownership. So what empowerment is there in line with the vision statement? I'm not sure.
program is there to do. It's there to engage and support the community in growing the sandbox. With that said, the Sandbox existing ambassador program has been managed by the Sandbox's own community team, and that's going to remain the case. And so
That was well worded. So the Sandbox existing ambassador program has been managed by the Sandbox's own community management team, and this will remain the case. It's very, very nicely worded. But there you have it. It's not going to the DAO. There's no DAO ownership of it of any kind. The DAO is just paying for it.
the DAO will not be the active managers of the Sandbox ambassador program. It will be the basically the source of support
And that basically means just the money.
for the program, but the actual management of the ambassador program will remain with the community team, which I think our existing ambassadors and those of you that have interacted with them, Panda being a member of it, can agree that they've been doing a great job and have
That was news to me. So I didn't know. I knew that there was like a Sandbox team who managed the ambassador program. I didn't know that they were that team was managed by, or that Panda was on it, as is other community members. That was news. I don't disagree with that. I don't find that to be like offensive or wrong in any way. It's just I had never seen that. Had not heard that before.
been of immense value and trust with the community, and so they will remain the primary caretakers of the ambassador program. And in terms
So that's kind of I think where they're saying the community is involved, empowered, because it seems like the community is choosing the ambassadors. So in a way, you can say that the community is, but that is very much outside of the DAO. So the DAO is not choosing anything. It seems like, but a part of the community who has been granted the authority to choose the ambassadors is, and they themselves are community members, like like uh like Pandapops, who, by the way, has my full faith and trust. I think Panda is great. I've seen Panda just be involved since I've been here, so yeah, I don't have any mistrust about that. But as some people mentioned in the forum post after this, the trust isn't with the mistrust isn't against Pandapops. It's against this whole system that's created a here's your SIP, here's your SIP. Now go vote. And then there wasn't much. There didn't seem to be much that changed in the SIP because of the forum post. The amount stayed the same. All of that. The only thing that changed was they created more on top of it. So I wouldn't exactly call that community driven so much as it was sandbox driven and they asked for the community to endorse it. Big difference. Read the chat. Miguel said being as someone, oh, you already spoke on that. Ching, I think I saw you say something, but my stream chat just I missed it. Okay. So yeah, that kind of revealed it. That was the big reveal. I think that's what they've been building up to. We are over halfway done now, and they're still at a very high level, though this is getting into the granular that the DAO will not be participating as active managers in any way. It'll just be the Sandbox team and the Sandbox community team within that team who are community members reviewing applications and such.
terms of then
So this is the first foray into them getting specific. So I'm going to note that. First time specifics. First time specifics, yeah, are spoken about, I guess. All right, so I appreciate that they said this. You know, I have thoughts about it, and I have a podcast coming up with Joseph about this topic. Like, should the DAO money be for the DAO or should it be for the sandbox? How should we look at that? That's coming up in about a week and a half. So I won't delve into that topic much right now. But I appreciate that they spoke about it. They spoke about it and they gave us a straight answer. Yeah. Okay, let's keep going.
how new ambassadors will be accepted. Right now, the community team is the one that's leading that. So it's not the DAO, it's not the council members that are interviewing new ambassador, but it's rather the existing community team from the sandbox that has been there for a very long time and includes members of the community itself. And in the future, the goal is for ambassadors themselves to be able to play an active role in interviewing and accepting and evaluating ambassador candidates.
I'm confused about what that means because I think isn't Panda right now an ambassador? thought she was an ambassador. Maybe she's not. Maybe she's part of the community team, and so she's like one step above that, but not quite an employee. I'm not really sure the status is, but I think what he's saying is ambassadors that are being interviewed and accepted now will have some say in interviewing and accepting future ambassadors. So maybe like an ambassador hiring team of ambassadors. I'm not sure.
And so it's that the community will get to really appoint and select the ambassadors that they want to be in.
So what that tells me is that in the future they plan on doing it and not this one. So interesting note. So where Seb said earlier, we want the community to do this. We want the community to be the ones to determine the budget. I think what Seb was speaking about was a future thing. So I think this gives clarity. So future. Yeah, future ambassador program will have more ambassador involvement. Okay.
In the program themselves.
Thanks, Kachinga.
If I can just add a
Appreciate the
few
chat.
things, I think Amit, what you said spot on. This SIPs felt naturally geared as being presented by the DAO for voting, because that's something to embark as many community member and active community member and transform them into ambassadors. So it naturally felt like this is a good candidate for a SIP, because the DAO is our way to connect deeply with the community. But like you said, there's no such thing as reporting to the DAO or be accountable to the DAO's community, because the DAO's community and the Sandbox community is one community at the end of the day, right? These are two sister companies that work hand in hand and share the same goals. So it's just the DAO is kind of acting like the bank, if you want, on this one, if I can oversimplify it. But all management and day-to-day activity will surely remain in the hands of the current team, your team, and the marketing people.
So this was an interesting comment from Cyril, and I think it revealed the heart of what my uneasiness is about this whole thing. All right, so let's go through it one more time. Amit said the question was at 30 minutes by Panda. She asked who manages the Sandbox program now and who will when the SIP passes. Amit said the Sandbox existing ambassador program has been managing the ambassador. The Sandbox team's community management team has been managing that. It will remain the case. The DAO won't be an active manager in any way in the ambassador program, but in the future, the goal is for the ambassadors themselves to be involved in interviewing and accepting other ambassador candidates. Unsure exactly what that means, but okay. Then Cyril says this SIP is a natural thing for to be presented within the DAO. And it felt like a good candidate because the DAO is connected deeply with the community, and there's no such thing. And even though that's the case, there is no such thing as reporting to the DAO's community. They work hand in hand and share the same goals. But most interestingly, he said that they're the same team, right? The DAO community and the Sandbox community is the same. And if that's the case, that struck me as, hold on, I lost my train of thought. How do I go back? I'll go back just a little bit. So 33:16. Let's go back. Oh dear, I have to go through it all over again. Some sort of problem with the thing itself.
And it, somehow and
33, almost there.
Not mutual for feed sharing with all employees like that. The reason why it's being brought to the DAO is because we think the vision of the ambassador program is incredibly closely aligned with what the DAO's own purpose is, which is how do we enable the community to participate in the evolution and growth of the Sandbox ecosystem? And so That's what the ambassador program is there to do. It's there to engage and support the community in growing the sandbox. With that said, the Sandbox existing ambassador program has been managed by the Sandbox's own community team, and that's going to remain the case. We'll
Okay, so that was the
primary new
first part
ambassador
he talks
Things
about.
that naturally felt like ours is a good candidate for a SIP because the DAO is our way to connect deeply with the community. But like you said, there's no such thing as reporting to the DAO or be accountable to the DAO's community because the DAO's community and the Sandbox community is one community at the end of the day, right? These are two sister companies that work hand in hand and share the same goals. So it's just the DAO is kind of acting like the bank, if you want, on this one, if I can oversimplify it. But all management and day-to-day activity will surely remain in the hands of the current team, your team, and the marketing people.
There we go. So there's no such thing as reporting to the DAO community because the DAO community and Sandbox community is the same thing. And I appreciate that Cyril said this. I don't have any misgivings about that perspective. However, that does create some interesting conflicts with what's been said so far. If the DAO community and the Sandbox community is the same thing, why is the DAO paying for it? Why isn't the DAO involved in the hiring process at all? They're the same thing, right? DAO community, Sandbox community. So that being the case, there's some interesting the DAO and the DAO Foundation and the Sandbox Game Company are two separate entities, but yet they're the same community. So the DAO should be paying for something that the Sandbox Game Company manages, but they're separate but the same. So there's this kind of weird. I think, and because this is a one-way communication, there isn't much that people can respond back to on this. And when I heard that statement from Cyril just now, I was scratching my head. The SIP came from the Sandbox team to manage and increase the compensation for a Sandbox team managed activity. They want the DAO to pay for it as the bank because they believe the DAO's vision and the Sandbox team with the ambassador program are closely aligned and overlapping, but they won't give the DAO any control over anything. It will remain answering to the Sandbox community team, which answers to the Sandbox marketing team. That has me scratching my head. There's something I don't like about that. Something that seems off about that explanation and how that's all been connecting to the AMA so far. This is what I will be talking to Joseph about is what is the DAO money really for? Yep. So I'll put in my little note here. And I'm not uneasy about what Cyril saying this. I'm uneasy about how what Cyril just said compares and contrasts with what has been pushed so far in this SIP. It's I don't know. Yeah. Kachinga said a contradiction. I agree. I agree. I the contradiction to me was just as soon as he said that, I'm like, well, wait a minute. Hold on. It seems like some people are saying that to their benefit, and now that we're saying, well, why isn't the DAO a part of this? Then you're saying, well, because they're the same. They're the same, so they don't need to be a part of this. DAO doesn't need to be a part of this because the DAO community and the Sandbox community are the same thing, but they are definitely separate. When it comes to funding, because the Sandbox Foundation, which is the DAO, and the Sandbox community and the Sandbox Game Company are legally separate, right? So both things are being said in this interview, this AMA, excuse me. So I'm uneasy about this. There seems like a contradiction in stating that the Sandbox DAO community, so SandFam, and Sandbox Game community are the same thing. That's not the contradiction. In stating that the that the DAO community won't have a say in how the ambassador program is managed, while also saying the Sandbox DAO community and the Sandbox Game community are the same thing. That seems like a big contradiction. And while also saying that the DAO should pay for the ambassador program because the DAO's vision and ambassador program is aligned. So you want the money without the accountability or responsibility to the DAO. So that's where that sits. That's the way it reads. Let's change the color so it's a little bit easier to read. Oh, that's purple. That's not what I want. Okay. There we go. That looks a little better. And by the way, if we had done SandDAO podcast episode, I think we could have worked our way through this in a very polite, gentle manner that wouldn't have been overly confrontational. We just would have discussed some of the peculiarities about that statement so that we could understand a little bit better, and so that would help to resolve the mental the mental red flag that brings up. That would have been my aim. Okay, let's keep going.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Seb had anything additional to add to that, but I am going to follow up with sort of a side question to who's managing the ambassador program. So if a SIP comes out that an ambassador may not wish to support or promote, because it has been mentioned that content can be requested, will these ambassadors be forced to promote this?
Yeah, it's a good question, and
That is a
to
good
make
question.
it very simple, absolutely not. So there will absolutely never be like pressure or force put on our ambassadors to support a SIP that they don't that is not in line with their own beliefs. I think it's important to say that as a Sandbox ambassador, in my view, it's important to always engage all topics in like a constructive and like mindful way. Like we're definitely going to have a code of conduct that we expect from ambassadors, but at no point will any ambassador be pressured to support a SIP or take a view or stance or produce content that's not in line with how they feel. And
That's good.
ambassadors, if we think about the different tracks, whether it's community, whether it's content,
That would
like
help me if I
it's
became an
again goes to
ambassador.
that differentiation between the DAO's role here in this program. As Cyril put it, the DAO is supporting the program from a SAND perspective, from a budgetary perspective, but it's not that the ambassador's primary goal here is solely focused on the DAO and SIPs. It's really about the Sandbox ecosystem at large.
And that to me is the telltale sign that it's not really the DAO at all. I'm not seeing any responsibility to the DAO at this point. How will they engage with the DAO? That's something I need to ask. Right? Lanzer question. How will ambassadors engage with the DAO specifically? Through the forums, Twitter, I mean, where is that engagement going to happen? I'm hoping that the engagement isn't zero. You know, you get the money and then you forget about it. I hope not. All right, let's keep going.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's not really about forcing the ambassador to vote yes or no or whatever, but at least being able to share that yes, there's SIPs going on, there's some voting that is happening. This is where ambassador can really help the DAO, just being known. But obviously, we will never ask anybody to be in favor or or against anything or the SIPs that are published if they have strong opinions. But just
This part was confusing to me because Cyril is the DAO administrator and is speaking on behalf of a Sandbox team managed activity. So
being there to relay the message as far as the DAO.
that's good. Cyril here is saying that they're going to help by relaying the message and advertise that SIPs are going on. So that's good. I think that answers the question.
Is concerned would be more than enough already.
Absolutely. Like this is not a job. You're not an employee. You're not bound or limited. This is flexible. You choose how you participate, how much time. You choose a topic that have your interests, which reflect your value. You even decide the method of how you can relay the information and drive. We want to improve what we have and leverage the knowledge, the know-how that you have, like what makes you like an ambassador to reach to new audiences, to increase the participation, and to decide how you do it. Like you are not having someone telling you what to do. You actually have the whole autonomy and freedom to decide how you're going to do it, how you're going to drive that engagement. Your method uh, should also and obviously be respectful of the term of rule of the platform and like respect of the community. But I'm excited to see how we're going to see very diverse method, and some will be more or less effective depending on the thematic, the country of the world, and so on.
One quick thing that Seb said there that I think is also important in how to frame the ambassador program is he said it's not a job. And I think that's really important. The ambassadors program, it's not there to be thought of as like a method of employment. The ambassadors are not like employees or full-time workers, and we're not thinking of the ambassador program as like a job. It really is there for passionate community members who love spending time in the sandbox and around the sandbox and talking about the sandbox and finding ways to reward them for doing so. It's not intended to be like a replacement for a job or a replacement for full-time compensation and things like that. It's really important to say that, and we're not expecting that type of responsibility or time commitment from our ambassadors. But in any type of community, especially in gaming, you have hardcore fans and people that just love or hate the product, but they really just want to talk about it and engage with it. And this is a program that's designed to support those people and reward them for the time that they're already largely putting in.
Well said. That was well said. It stayed high level. It didn't really get down into the weeds, and it pretty much echoed what Seb said. That was well said. Good job, Amit.
Excellent on all of that. The next question, let's move on to, will the DAO Council leadership be involved in the selection of ambassadors? I feel like this has slightly
The
been
answer is
touched
probably
upon,
no.
but
Right? I think they answered that
a bit more.
indirectly.
Yeah, absolutely not.
They're talking about
their
the
role.
special council.
Again, the role of the council is to give a recommendation on the SIP itself, and they already did that. When the SIP is, when every time a SIP is being in the work, it is presented to the council. There's a good debate going on. The council is asking questions, is listening to the operational and administrative team to check for legality or relevance of the proposal itself. And then there's a vote, and the council gives an overall recommendation. It gets attached to the SIP. that's the extent. That's what they do, and their role stops there. So they will absolutely not be involved in the day-to-day of selecting any ambassadors, unless the SIP is about one particular ambassador, right? Which is not the case today.
Right now, we're effectively asking the community to vote on like engaging a budget, starting an effort, doing something versus what we had before doing nothing. So we expect that everyone wants to do something, that it opens the door to like then after that refine, be flexible, and so on. We're not asking you to vote for yes or not in favor of one person, individual, one ambassador in person, and so on. That's not the case. So we hope like really the key takeaway after this IMA and before the voting on the SIP clause is like, please vote yes, no, or abstain, but let's reach the quorum so we can enforce and kick off something that will impact Sandbox starting this second half of the year.
A very good point made by you, Seb, right now, which is no matter what your vote is, definitely do go vote. So yeah, go to the Sandbox DAO SIP-11, and you'll be able to vote yes or no, or you can abstain if you so wish. And yeah, definitely go cast your vote, because your opinions definitely matter in regards to all of the SIPs that we launch as part of the Sandbox DAO. So it's with knowing like, yes, the council, the DAO council and leadership aren't involved in the selection process. It is the selection process will just be the Sandbox Marketing Team. So moving on, what is the current size of the program and how will that change with the relaunch? And Amit, I think this is targeted to you.
Sure. So
Cool. This is a good one. This is a great question. Get myself in order here. So the question Panda asked was, what is the current size of the program and how will that change? So these are specifics. We are 2/3 of the way through.
on the size of the current program, it's varied over time with the ebbs and flows, but on average, it's been at about 30 to 35 ambassadors. Again, largely focused in that community manager capacity. But at any given time, I would say 5 to 10 of those are active and engaged on a weekly basis and talking to the community. So that's the current scale of the existing program.
Huh. So we saw that answer with all my friends a little bit earlier when I pulled up the compensation table, and Amit just said it here. So on average, there are about 30 to 35 ambassadors in the investor program, and at any given time, only 5 or 10 of them are active. Okay. That's fascinating. I did not know that. Sounded like there were way more active. But if only 5 or 10 are actively engaged on a weekly basis, I get why they're doing this SIP. I get it. They want to incentivize more participation. Makes sense. Let's keep going.
In terms of how it'll change with the relaunch, I think I can share, and excited to share that we've had over 800 applicants already into the new program. That's not to say all of them are perfect fits for
and
the
I'm one of
tracks
those
that they
800.
want, and frankly, with the initial budget we have, it's not that it's going to be enough to support every single person. But the goal of this new relaunch is absolutely to substantially scale the size of the program and be able to have far more ambassadors and far more roles, while obviously ensuring that all of them are being compensated fairly for their time and commitment. And like I mentioned, that compensation will be shared upfront with every ambassador, who can then make a decision of whether they wish to join or not. But I think it's fair to say that our goal by the end of the year is to reach over 100 ambassadors that are active, which would represent a 20x increase over what I think we have currently, and it's very ambitious. And then we move into next year and evaluate and try to go from there.
I don't think it's super ambitious. I think that's the right move to make.
Yeah, we were very, very humbled and excited by the initial amount of interested parties to the new program.
800 is a pretty big number. And to whittle that down to 100 through the management team, That's achievable.
Sorry about that. I got slightly disconnected there. So what can the community expect for the future of the program?
Seb, I don't know if you want to take this one. I can say a few things and then maybe let Seb finish it off.
Yeah, go
strong.
ahead. Try it.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I think, you know,
This is helping me
one of the key
decide
things is that
on
we
my
want to be
vote.
responsive to the community. We're not suggesting that the SIP, exactly how it's been proposed, is perfect as is, but the goal of the SIP, the goal of the new program is very clear. We want to.
That's an interesting thing to say. Put it this way, that's an interesting thing for the DAO admin team to accept. Right now, the SIP process is when it goes to vote, like it is right now. When that happens, let's see, when that happens, shoot, I just lost my train of thought. There were some spam chats that just happened. Okay, he said it wasn't perfect, right? So the expectation so far is that when the SIP goes to vote, after the public comment period, that's the SIP that they're going to accept and expect of you. I think what Amit is saying is that it will change after the fact. I'm not opposed to that. I just want it to be fairly applied by the admin team across all SIPs, not just Sandbox. That's it. That's my only note there. As long as this is applied fairly across all SIPs and not just TSB SIPs, this is fine. Yeah, that's fine. Just make sure you're not applying a different level of scrutiny to community SIPs. Because at that point, I mean, no. Then you're giving the many dozens of TSB SIPs a distinct advantage over being passed than every community SIP at that point, including mine. That's not cool. Okay, so let's say, what do you say? This SIP isn't perfect. Will improve over time. Let's keep
Want
going.
to grow the number of community members, the number of you who are listening right now, who are able to be involved in the sandbox and who are able to be rewarded for being involved in the sandbox. And the most important thing that you can trust is that it will be an iterative program. And so even right now, the reason why we haven't published and shared the compensation structure is because we're listening to feedback from our existing ambassadors and from applicants and things like that, and making adjustments.
Okay, good.
And listening to you all. And that'll continue to happen, whether it's around the number of tracks, how it's structured. All these types of things will continue to evolve and change with the community and based on your feedback. But the goal of the new ambassador program is to be able to expand and have more community members involved and rewarded for supporting the sandbox. And that's what you can expect in terms of the future of the program.
I think it's just the beginning. Once it's voted, the rest can follow. If it's not voted, what's going to if we reach a quorum, there's three scenarios. Like, we don't reach a quorum, so effectively we cannot advance on it. We reach a quorum and yes, it's voted at the majority, then we can officially kick things start off. We'll be even more active into it. We'll involve multiple people. We'll publish and propose a different level of compensation for the different action and activity based on the 4 categories that were mentioned previously. If no is voted, then like we have to go back to rework either ourselves in a different model the whole program and understand why it was voted no, where were the key reasons that actually were obstructing the idea of launching a new ambassador program to go live with the DAO. And that will mean like pushing probably by several weeks or months and giving no ability to advance into that program. So it would be a shame, but we'll be respecting, of course, the opinion of the community and rework it with them to make sure that the second time it will be proposed either by us or eventually by anyone in the end could also propose their own ambassadors program or their own version of it to be
Now,
voted by the community.
I missed that the first time. That's fascinating. And anyone can propose their own ambassador program for the community. Huh. How about that? Yeah, that makes sense. So this is exactly the way I would have wanted this to go. I missed that part when I listened to this the first time. Seb is saying that we'll rework it if no. The benefits will get delayed, which is fair enough to be expected. And then anyone else can propose their own ambassador program if they really want to. Hmm. I don't know enough about the ambassador program to really do that, but I suppose that opens up some very, very interesting possibilities. All right, let's keep going.
To
Only 10
so
minutes left.
effectively we can do something here.
Thank you for that, Seb. And it's now time to start wrapping up. However, any questions that the audience might have, please do jump on over to the forum where you can discuss this AMA, discuss the SIP, ask your questions, and we'll have someone in there who will be able to try and help you understand anything that you may not have understood. But yes, I want to say a huge thank you to Cyril Forte for being here, who I believe is just about to take off from the sky right now. Amit, thank
Safe
you ever so
travels,
much.
Cyril.
And as always, Sebastian, thank you for being here as well.
Thank you, everyone. I hope that it provided enough clarity to help you make the informed decision. Once again, we don't necessarily need
I
to
think I've
agree,
landed on
but
a
a
decision.
vote is necessary to reach a quorum. Like the worst situation would be to not be able to advance on anything and like not benefiting to progress the sandbox and its ecosystem. I don't know if we have a few minutes to allow a few questions or we'll move directly to the forum. I'm available. I can stay on my side a few more minutes, definitely. If you want, happy to continue.
I am okay if we take maybe just one or two questions.
This is the part that, after all of that, right, 2/3 of the way in, most of it was high level. Some of it was specific, like the 800 applicants, 30 to 35 ambassadors. The DAO will not have any part to play. What else was key? So let's highlight that part. Let's highlight the parts that were extremely helpful or gave us new information about the AMA. All right, so here's one part of it. So that one. And anyone can propose their own. Cyril said later, that was good. Look at this one. A little bit about, will there be pressure to post? No. The answer was no. All right, so Cyril said being able to share SIPs going on. Asking how to relate. Oh, that's what Cyril said. This is not a job. You're not in balance. So you choose, you decide. So that was important. All right, what else? who manages it. So it's going to remain in the hands of the DAO. Excuse me, the Sandbox team, and specifically the community management team, and of which Pandapops and others are an existing member of that community management team. So they will be actively managing it. Hence, maybe the reason why they chose her to do this AMA hosting. So then in the future, the goal is for ambassadors themselves to select people. So echoing what Seb said. Okay. That Kelsey was head of marketing and was all my friends. That was good to know. For tracks, they already went over that one quite a bit in depth elsewhere. How will the compensated be? Don't know. But the fact there's going to be one, they already mentioned that in the Q&A before now. And ambassadors, not employees, they're contractors. Okay, kind of overlapping, but good. All right, what else? What else did we talk about? Sandbox started in 2018. It's created, and that was a good kind of gee whiz, but still that was good to know. And we wanted to create a quantifiable way, creating something structured. That was good to know. Why now? And kind of the same stuff. Okay. So some new things. Some new things that were good to know. All right, now let's get to these tweet questions.
With the people asking limited to just one question each.
Oh, the reason why I brought that up was because this AMA was mostly questions that had already been asked and answered on the forums. It's kind of like a rehash AMA. Then these are the new questions that have been asked since the AMA started. So we've been going for 47 minutes in this Twitter space, and with 8 minutes left, they open it up for questions. One person can only ask one question a piece. So,
Amit, do you have some time to?
I'm pretty literal when it comes to an AMA. It's supposed to be about people asking you things and you answering them, but that's not exactly what happened here. Hey Sebga, what's up?
To be able to stay
On
for
the
that
tail
as well?
end of reacting to the AMA on SIP-11 that happened on Friday with the ambassador program.
Oh,
Yep. Yeah, of course.
okay.
And I don't know, Panda, if you want to read them off. I guess we have like the tweet format, so I think we have a feed of maybe some people asking questions.
Okay, let me throw that. Currently I had to connect on my mobile, so
First question comes from
Give
G.
me one
I can
second.
kind of get started as well, Panda, as you do that. G is us. You asked, would love if we could share the code of conduct or notes from it. Absolutely. Yeah, happy to publish in the forum and maybe in our medium the ambassador code of conduct so that everyone has visibility into it, and want to reinforce that it's not going to be there to say to shape like a view or force anything. It's more so just we want ambassadors to be productive, communicative, and like active participants in the community, and be productive and constructive in the way that they communicate. Let's see what else we have.
I've grabbed a question here. So Duddy asks, when are the results of the new set of ambassadors coming in? They want to know because they applied.
Yeah, good question. So as I mentioned, we've had over 800, probably well over that. At this point, that number might even be a bit dated. And the process is that our internal community team reviews the applications, tries to gauge like the fit of the person, as well as for the tracks that they indicated that they'd be interested in. And then we try to set up actual interviews with each and every candidate that's interested, that passes that initial, on paper application test per se. So to be honest, it is a really time intensive process. because we think ambassadors it's important to get ambassadors who are going to be representatives right. And so I can't frankly guarantee like here's the turnaround time that you're going to be heard back from, but just trust that your application will be reviewed. And if you're deemed an immediate good fit for this initial batch, we're kind of thinking about this program in a phased rollout. So we're trying to get to the first set of ambassadors for each different track, as well as migrating some of our existing ambassadors into the program. And then we're going to get to everyone else. So trust that your application will be reviewed, that you will be reached out to if we're ready to do interviews. From a timeline perspective, like to be honest and not to kind of like pre-commit to something we can't keep, I don't know how long it'll take, but the team
So he doesn't know. The answer to the question is he doesn't know.
is spending hours and hours every single week dedicated to reviewing the applicants.
Great answer. I have found probably maybe this be sort of like the last one or second to last one. This is by Backspace. So would it be better if some of the ambassadors can work and assessed by the country managers in their country, as it would be more relevant than a single centralized program manager? They also said that they believe IRL meetings or events engaging with the community is important too, which I do agree with. Can you answer any of those?
I can answer the first part and maybe let Seb answer the second. So that's a really good question and a really good point.
That is an interesting question.
We will be having ambassadors, and it's something I should have raised prior. The ambassador program as a whole is a single consolidated program, but within it, we effectively have ambassadors who will be considered part of like the global team, and we will have ambassadors that are considered as part of a regional team of ambassadors. And so in the different countries where we have strong local presences, whether that's Korea, Japan, Thailand, Turkey, India, etc., we do have local country managers, as you pointed out, and those regional teams will be responsible for managing those quote unquote regional ambassadors who potentially have a localized audience, potentially speak in the native tongue, have local initiatives, etc. And so we absolutely will be making use of our regional teams and country managers to manage ambassadors who are specific to a particular region. So really good point. I'm glad you asked it. And that is the plan. For the second part, maybe I'll let you weigh in here, Seb, but I think the question was around it'd be amazing to have IRL events and meetups and things like that for ambassadors in the different regions. And I know that's something that you've both attended and supported. So maybe you can speak to this.
Absolutely. I think it's quite common in the Web3 space that not all the events are always organized only by the project themselves, but by like just member of the community, ambassadors. We've seen that typically with Bored Ape, with Puggy Penguins, for example. They have communities of their own in Thailand or in Japan, with the members elected by the community that drive like those very simple dinner, but really cool at the same time and very friendly. And I love to support that even more at Sandbox. I know people want to do it. Sometimes they ask us for some sponsoring budget. Most of the time, we've granted that budget directly at Sandbox. It was mostly a decision coming from the marketing team and myself. And from now on, I think like we should even hopefully give even more autonomy, so they don't even have to. They can do that naturally without having to wonder if yes, will I receive the budget to achieve that. One of the previous SIP was already going into that direction. It had a majority of yes, but unfortunately it didn't reach the quorum. But that's what we wanted to do at those major conferences, which are Token 2049 in Singapore, and like the upcoming events in Thailand this year with DevCon 7, the big Ethereum conference. And I think it included other global activation. So probably if this gets voted on, we hope like ambassadors could run them as well directly where they want at different scales as well. It can be a simple dinner with 10, 20 member, a pizza and beer event with maybe 50 members and some swag and t-shirt to educate creators. You see that a lot on social media. if you follow Sandbox with some communities, and it should go on and grow.
Okay, I think we are probably now at time. Once again, anybody that does have any questions, they can bring them to the forum to discuss the SIP over there and have any of your questions answered over there. Don't forget to go visit the Sandbox DAO, go have a look at SIP-11, have a read of it. Make sure to vote regardless of what you are voting, whether that's a yes or if you're abstaining. Please do go and vote.
And
We appreciate you guys being here. Once
that's
again,
the end.
thank you so much to Cyril, who was here earlier, Amit, Seb, and I do want to say a special thank
So
you
I had a lot of mixed
to
thoughts after I
Checkbook,
listened to this for the first
who was
time.
ready to speak when we were having technical
I didn't
difficulties.
know whether or not I supported the SIP or didn't. I'm still kind of in that.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Have a good rest of the day, great weekend, and looking forward to see the results of your voting.
Excellent. And remember, have a good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the metaverse. We will see you next time.
I think I know how I want to vote though now. I'm at the point where there's so much disagreement with the current ambassadors, but I don't want to stand in the way of the improving of it. I'm going to probably abstain so that I can commit to the quorum. I'm not voting yes because there's too many ambassadors who don't appreciate this new direction. And there are ambassadors that I respect. Too many voices that this SIP, this AMA didn't really answer the tough questions. It didn't really engage at the level that I expected it to for an AMA. It was more of like kind of a public release statement, and so there wasn't much back and forth, which would be expected for a DAO discussion. And so that didn't convince me to vote yes. I'm not going to vote no because I believe in the glass half full approach on this, that if the SIP gets approved, then they can iterate on its success and they can do better. They did say that they want this to eventually be something where the DAO ambassadors are responding to. That was up somewhere up here. That was their goal. And Seb did say that anyone could propose a better one if they really wanted to. So that combined, I'm going to vote abstain. I want to contribute to quorum, but I don't want to vote yes or no. Maybe I'll vote half yes, half no. Yeah. At the very least, I'm going to nullify my vote. I just want to make sure it counts. So that's where I sit on it right now. All right. Let's flip back over. And now we're back. So back at it again. We went through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 slides of reaction comments. That's a lot. That's a lot. All right, let's outro out. So future episodes, we're done with the reaction down here. Reaction AMA. Next we have the rules of DAO money with Joseph coming up on Saturday. And then Sunday we have an interview with Crypto Diplo for what will become SIP-13 for NFT crafting and drops. Sandbox Spaces. So Sandbox Spaces is still Discord, Sandbox DAO forums, Twitter with hashtag SandFam, Sandbox DAO, the Sandbox Game. Then on Mondays, which is today, Mochaverse Hall later tonight, Bulls on the Block on Saturday, Coffee with Captain Monday through Friday, Well members with Natively Digital on Tuesday, and SandFam Cafe Monday. Let's find someone to raid. We will be all finished for today. Let's see, is there anybody who is online? I know Sebgo was on earlier. He's not on now. And Wizards Assemble. Looks like the Sandbox game. Oop. Nope, it's just me. I'm the only one online right now. All right, let's look. Oh, the Sandbox game is online with art. With Pandapops. Pandapops is on. So we're going to raid Panda. And let's do that. So the Sandbox game. Little raid button. And for some reason, it makes it a little bit more difficult now. The Sandbox game. Okay, so a raid's been created. Thank you all for your time. My ending thoughts are definitely that it came across as damage control more than it did, and a public release statement versus an ask me anything. The prepared questions and the pre-approved speakers made it to where it was a little bit difficult to say that this was really like a back and forth discussion. It did answer some new questions. I would have really liked to have done the podcast with them that where we could ask this of them. But 48 more hours. Go vote, make your voice heard, please, and let's raid. See you, everybody.